Government agencies are continuing to adjust their technology strategies to support a hybrid work environment. Hybrid work environments help agencies improve their ability to hire and retain talent and remain operational in the face of disruptions. However, the need remains for agencies to continue modernizing infrastructure to ensure secure access to resources for that hybrid workforce. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and here to talk about that today are Guy Cavallo, Chief Information Officer at the Office of Personnel Management, Paul Ghattas, Solution Architect for ThunderCat Technology, and Rahul Dubey, Director of Product Management at Cisco. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. And Guy, I'd like to start with you, if I may. Just give us a brief sense of the scope of OPM's operations from an IT perspective, and what was your agency's experience in adapting its IT platforms to support a remote workforce?
Oh, no, thank you, Wyatt. I'm glad to be here. I think one thing that the COVID situation caused everybody to deal with was a real test of your remote productivity and connectivity strategies. When I got to OPM, we didn't have a standard enterprise productivity tool. We had about 5 or 6 different ones, and especially with the workforce being distributed and at that time working primarily from home, I knew that was a big burden. So we quickly consolidated on one tool. And what it's allowed us to do is, as we moved on from COVID, instead of just sending everybody home and waiting for them to come back to the office, it's allowed us to also expand our hiring practices and say, hey, this worked. Do we have to have everybody that works for OPM in Washington, D.C. or one of our other remote offices? So the technology and the quick adaptation of it really helped us show that we could expand our hiring capabilities beyond where we have physical offices.
And then just to follow up on that, so what challenges is OPM facing today now to, establish a more modern and agile foundation for supporting your workforce going forward?
Well, in addition to moving people to a hybrid world of work, I also had a large number of different phone systems. And one thing that you do as a federal employee, you have a federal phone number that rings all the time. So we also made that part of our productivity suite so that when the employee, wherever they work, whether they were in the office or whether they went home, they could take their OPM phone number with them. We had employees that were using their home phones to try to do the work of supporting our retirees and hiring. So one thing I wanted to do is make sure everybody was on a business line to do that. Our next phase of modernization is we've been using a traditional VPN technology for remote workers, and we're in the middle of moving to zero trust connectivity, which will just make all of this that much more secure and easier to use from the end user standpoint. So 2 of my favorite things: make it easier on the end user, but also make it more secure. And again, that our strategy will be that we'll be able to support workers wherever they are without having to move people across the country.
And then, Rahul, let me switch to you now. What challenges are you seeing in government in trying to establish an IT environment that really supports employees, regardless of whether they're working in a federal office or remotely, and especially when you're considering security and compliance concerns?
First of all, thank you, Guy, for this important, critical conversation. I'm glad we have some good partners over here, Guy and Paul as well, with us. I do want to come back to a question. And recently we had a WebEx1 conference in LA as well. We talked about the key challenges for public sector, and I was speaking over there too. What we find over here is the security and compliance, as you mentioned. That's one of the key challenges. And we have privacy and data protection. That's another one. The other one is digital transformation. We talk about these are the 3 key challenges which are being faced at this point in time. But these challenges can also be looked at as opportunities of making sure we are working towards these guidelines. And also with the I'm going to go back on the security and compliance first, right? So we talk about these are some of the fundamental challenges we have when we are talking about cloud initiatives. We talk about our cloud service providers, cloud service offerings. We have some of the clear frameworks from FedRAMP. We have in our civilian agencies, we talk about FedRAMP, which is a federal risk authorization and management program. So when we look into those guidelines, we want to make sure we are any of the cloud providers, any of the cloud offerings have to abide by those guidelines, which is set by FedRAMP. The other one is we talk about the privacy concerns also. So we want to make sure like we are addressing the privacy guidelines as compared to the set guidelines from NIST perspective. And now we are following on the NIST Rev 5, which is the FedRAMP also guidelines. That's one. The other, we talk about digital transformation. That's key for us because artificial intelligence is right at the core, right? It's not a buzzword anymore. It's becoming more of a requirement. It's more of a necessity rather than a luxury, which we used to see in the past few years. And this is where it goes back to the executive order from our president also, from the White House, like what we talk about from artificial intelligence. That's where we have growth opportunities. And this is where we have, like from our companies, whether it's Cisco, whether it's other companies as well, we look into those guidelines, especially from our Cisco and WebEx side. We make sure that we are abiding by those challenges, and we are making sure that we are building some offerings, keeping those challenges in mind that can suffice the government agencies.
And then, Paul, the cloud proved to be a huge enabler for agencies to keep operating during the pandemic. Where are you seeing agencies making progress now in leveraging the cloud to support a more collaborative and hybrid workplace experience?
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity and the question. Yeah, so our customers are seeing more and more requirements for back to work. Some of them are not. So they're trying to introduce both the back to the workplace and hybrid workforce together. These are challenges with different mix of budgets and operations that they need to handle about how their employees are going to come back. And I think the biggest opportunity is when the pandemic first hit, obviously not too many people were prepared for that. They're seeing opportunities in case that does happen again. They want to be prepared. Hopefully, God willing, that doesn't happen again. But we're now prepared for more opportunities with platforms like Cisco WebEx, where we can introduce any type of in-office, out-of-office, or hybrid workforce for our customers.
Absolutely. And then, Guy, back to you. What's different about your IT strategies today compared to just even a year or two ago about supporting today's federal workforce? And maybe what lessons would you offer other federal IT leaders about, establishing a more agile and secure IT environment?
All right. No, thank you, Wyatt. One thing that's really different is we have an updated IT strategic plan on the OPM website, which replaced one that was years out of date. And it was all focused on delivering the tools to our workers to allow them to do their jobs as effectively and efficiently as possible wherever they're working. And that also means we don't want them working at midnight at home and try to do a work-life balance. So you're going to see we're very strongly moving to the cloud. That makes it easier for us to connect people wherever they are because we're no longer tied to a physical data center. And all of my development, all of my efforts are headed that way. Definitely the executive orders on improving customer experience and user experience. We want to factor those in regardless of where the person's working. We want them to be able to use a system that's secure, easy to access, and easy to use. So the real change is we're just going to keep doing more of what we've been doing the last couple of years. Like I said, for us, probably the biggest technology change will be moving from a VPN to zero trust connectivity, and the improvements that leads for both security and changing the way our users behave. But the other thing I changed was I moved to a 24/7 help desk support because people now, not all being in Washington, D.C., if you have employees in California, doesn't help them if the help desk is no longer available after 3 o'clock in the afternoon on any day. And with people working extended hours, that was one thing I would recommend to people to do is don't just take your current model and maybe move it to the cloud, but look at how are your employees working, adjust your practices to it. The other thing we changed, Wyatt, was that if somebody is a remote worker, instead of just saying, here's your laptop, work on this little screen while you're editing 100-page documents. If they were in the office, we would give them 2 monitors and a docking station. So we're going ahead and equipping them at home with that same equipment, because I want them to be able to work as efficiently as possible, not just trying to live on a laptop screen. And I would say that's one lesson I observed as we went through the pandemic. It took agencies a long time to adjust to, we're all used to taking our laptop home and working at home during a snowstorm, and you can put up with a little, 11-inch screen for that. But when you're there month after month, it seemed foolish to force people to use a smaller keyboard and a smaller screen. So just changing where we provided their equipment really helped their productivity.
Sounds like a simple idea, but I'm sure it had a big impact on employee experience and morale and productivity as well. So thank you for sharing that. Rahul and Paul, as we wrap up, both your organizations work together in helping agencies implement their modernization strategies. What recommendations would you respectively make to help agencies modernize more effectively, especially in support of a hybrid work model? Paul, maybe you could take that one first.
Thank you. Recommendations for these modernizations would be, as said before, the security and ease of use in place. So we're switching from like a VPN to a zero trust, following all the FedRAMP offerings that we have in modernized hybrid workforce. Those are all tools that many of the vendors out there have. Those are the tools that we would recommend to put in place.
Great. And Rahul?
Yeah, thanks, Pai. I'm going to go back to the question which you asked about the challenges, right? Like what challenges do we have and what are we sharing from our organization's perspective? From Cisco and WebEx side, I'm going to talk about from my sides as well. We have a good line of offerings. We talk about like from a WebEx suite perspective, which has helped along during the pandemic environment and post-pandemic as well. Like we have WebEx suites services, which we are talking about like meetings, messaging, and calling also. And they all go back to Paul's earlier point of security and compliance. We have a WebEx for Government offering, which is fully FedRAMP moderate authorized. And we have meetings, messaging, and now recently we added calling over there too as a significant change. So we have those two offerings as part of their FedRAMP moderate authorized offering, which can be which are actually currently being used by some of the great government agencies also. Besides that, we have like Cisco devices. We are bringing in like WebEx devices. If we talk about like any of the room bars, any of the conference rooms, we have like those devices. They're actually tangentially working compatible with the FedRAMP moderate authorized products also. Besides that, we are also having like some of the contact center devices. We talk about like contact center offering, which is our WebEx Contact Center Enterprise for Government. That is also a FedRAMP moderate authorized. In future, we are also building beyond, as we know, like beyond government agencies, we are also getting into like some of the national security and defense offerings, which will help enable the hybrid collaboration environment. Our goal is to make sure like we are satisfying all the needs for whether it's remote workers, whether it's actually in the office workers. And what collaboration means is like providing that balance. And that's what our organizations are bringing to the forefront is what is the balance between what we talk about hybrid versus remote, fully remote versus actually in the office. And this is where collaboration tends to build that bridge together. And that's where Cisco and WebEx is at the forefront of providing and helping our agencies, our government agencies, and public sector also included, to help modernize that infrastructure.
Well, Guy Cavallo and Paul Ghattas and Rahul Dubey, thank you all for taking a few minutes to share your respective insights on really how to help enable today's hybrid workforce working for the federal government. So thank you all for joining us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you.